Hello, I'm Robin. Welcome to Bookspin. The Queen of the Afternoon is the fourth story in the Instrumentality of Mankind sequence and was originally published in Galaxy April 1978, and it featured on the magazine's cover illustration for that issue. So this is another Cordwainer Smith story with quite an interesting publication history. It was actually published posthumously some 12 years after Paul Linebarger's death, aka Cordwainer Smith, who passed away in 1966. Right? Now, in the introduction to The Rediscovery Man, written by J.J. Pierce, Pierce says that this story was an unfinished manuscript, which was later completed by his wife, Genevieve Linebarger. So, this was one of the last Smith stories to be published. But in terms of the future history, chronology, it actually takes place early on in the timeline. It also provides some important backstory to explain how the instrumentality of mankind came to be established. So, this story can be seen as a direct sequel to the last story, Mark Elf. It's set in the same post-apocalyptic setting on a future Earth, and it features a few recurring characters. This time, the focus of the story is a girl called Julie, who is the sister of Carlotta from the last story. And together they are two of a trio of German sisters who were sent up into orbit by their father at the end of World War II to help escape the Soviets, right, and put into suspended animation. And like her sister, Julie finds herself drawn back down to Earth thousands of years later and revived in the distant future. And it's there that she meets her sister, who has now aged some 200 years or so. She's now a very elderly woman, and her husband Laird, who is the man who revived them both and recalled them to Earth. Together, Laird and her sister want to recruit her to help lead a rebellion against a tyrannical ruling class, which now exists in this new society known as the Dwins, right? And the Dwins have long oppressed the rest of humanity, known as the True Men. Now, I won't go into a lot of detail here about the history and the world building and what these terms means, but it is interesting. We get introduced to these concepts, and this brings us to another class of beings who get discussed somewhat in the story: the unauthorized men, aka the underpeople, which I find really interesting. Right? Julie meets and befriends a few of the underpeople, and they join her on her cause. This story is in fact the first explicit mention of the term underperson, and that is an animal-derived person bred by the true men. That is the definition that Cordwainer Smith uses, I think. They're basically uplifted humanoid animals who play a very important role in Cordwainer Smith's world building. And among the underpeople that Julie meets, we see the return of this friendly Ursine character that was introduced in Mark Elf, and we also meet a family of dog people. And we also meet what is perhaps my favourite character so far in all of these stories that I've read, a cat woman called Herky, and she is the bear's housekeeper. Now, as bizarre as it sounds, all of these characters have their own interesting quirks and character traits, and everyone is able to communicate telepathically with each other, both the humans and the underpeople. Even Julie can do this, although she does struggle to control this ability at first because she's never learned how to control her telepathy, how to mute her thoughts or direct them to just one person so not everyone can listen in and understand what she's thinking all the time, which is apparently an essential life skill in this new era. Anyway, it's quite a charming story in a way. I don't want to go into too much detail into the plot here, but it's a nice, easy read, and it's got quite a sort of fable-like feel to it. It feels like a fairy tale in a way. That's how it reads. That explains the origin of the instrumentality of mankind and its emergence out of a heroic struggle against oppression. But despite its mythological feel and its far-fetchedness, the characterization in this story is quite intimate and charming, and there are some really nice humorous touches to boot. So I really enjoyed this story. In fact, I want to give you an example of this. Okay, I'm going to read a short extract from this story to illustrate some of the humor that I found quite delightful. So this scene follows shortly after Julie has woken up on Earth, and the first beings who she gets introduced to, who are a family of telepathic dog people. Okay. Julie began to speak in words again, but at last she seemed to understand. Shouting her language would not help any. Instead, she thought, "Please, dear little puppy dogs, please help me. Please understand me." Bill kept his dignity, but he noticed with dismay that his tail was wagging of its own accord. He realized that the urge was uncontrollable. He felt both resentful and happy as he thought back at her. "Of course we understand you and will try to help you, but please don't think your thoughts so hard or so recklessly. They hurt our minds when they're so bright and sharp." Julie tried to turn down the intensity of her thought. She pleaded, "Take me to Germany." The four unauthorized men, mother, father, daughter and son, looked at each other. They had no idea what a Germany might be. It was Oda who turned to Julie, girl to girl, and speaked. "Think some Germany at us, so we can know what it is." There came forth from the strange girl images of unbelievable beauty. Picture after clear picture emerged until the little family was almost blinded by the magnificence of the display. They saw the whole ancient world come to life. Cities stood bright in a green encircled world. There were no aloof and languid true men. Instead, all the people they saw in Julie's mind resembled Julie herself. They were vital, sometimes fierce, forceful. They were tall, erect, long-fingered, and of course, they did not have the tails of the unauthorized men. The children were pretty beyond belief. So, there you have it. That's just a taster of Cordwainer Smith's writing. It's a neat little story. I really enjoyed it. It's not quite as mind-bending as some of his stuff, but it is entertaining and charming, and it's quite significant in terms of its place in the chronology and the world building of this series. That's all for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.